Hey there, my name is Alex. I am the Silver Mont. And 5 years ago, I didn't realise it had been that long, I made a two-part video discussing a simple topic, a simple, stupid topic, with no clear answer. Who is the strongest protagonist between Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne? I divided that into two parts, two videos, gameplay and lore. Whilst my conclusions weren't concrete, it was my opinion that when it came to story or lore, strength, in-universe, canon, strength, whatever, the chosen undead was the strongest, partially due to being able to increase their own strength without the need of any maiden, such as the Firekeeper, Melina in Elden Ring, and so on. And for gameplay, it was a toss-up between the Slayer of Demons and Bearer of the Curse, due to Demon Souls having some very broken abilities and weapons, and the Bearer of the Curse just having a ridiculous number of tools at their disposal. Of course, since then we've had 3 more games, Dark Souls 3, Shadows Die Twice, and Elden Ring, and quite a few people have been asking for an update. So let's have a look at them, shall we? I'm not going to retread the feats of the characters I covered before, but please feel free to go and check out those older videos. In this one we're going to cover the feats of the Ashen one, Wolf, and the Tarnished, and see how it shakes up the rankings, if at all. We'll cover story first, then gameplay. Let's start with the Ashen one of Dark Souls 3. Right off the bat, the Ashen one has the same disadvantage that almost every character here shares, being reliant on another individual to increase their strength. The Ashen one is reliant on the Firekeeper, and I guess to a certain extent, the Blacksmith. Of course the Firekeeper is functionally immortal in some ways, but still utterly defenseless, and even if you start punching her, she'll just kinda take it, and who knows why. It would be a simple matter to abduct her and lock her in a box somewhere, and then the Ashen one has to go and save her if he wants to level up. There's also the matter of Wolf's Mortal Blade, but we'll get to that a bit later. Of course, the main thing people bring up when talking about the Ashen one is that they defeated the Soul of Cinder, which people theorize is the combined strength of everyone who ever linked the fire. Personally, I don't think that is the case. It is certainly an amalgamation of all those who linked the fire, but it wouldn't quite make sense to be as strong as each of them combined. Think of it this way, Gwyn linked the fire and most of his life, strength, and whatnot was consumed in the process. Then when it came time for Dark Souls 2, most of those souls have returned to the world in some way, and they are gathered up by someone who links the fire, and then repeat. In other words, it's not like the new souls are being added to it every time and kept there, as that would sort of defeat the point of linking the fire in the first place. That isn't to say the Soul of Cinder is weak, but I don't think it is meant to be as strong as some people think it is. It isn't like Gwyn plus Chosen Undead plus Bearer of the Curse plus everyone else who ever linked the fire, and fusing them all together. Of course, defeating the gathered knowledge and combat experience and fighting styles of an indeterminate number of individuals gathered as a collective, legion-like entity is still pretty impressive. Beyond that, the Ashen One defeats several powerful opponents, perhaps chief amongst them being Pontiff Sullivan, the various Lords of Cinder, the Nameless King, and of course, Slave Knight Gale, after he partially consumed the Dark Soul. Gameplay-wise, the Ashen One obviously has a wide selection of weapons and spells to use, however most of those spells are kind of lackluster, as magic in general was pretty underwhelming in Dark Souls 3. Much of the game was focused around R1 spamming with something fast, rather like Bloodborne, with the caveat that the Ashen One lacks the Hunter's regain on successive attacks, but obviously has a much wider selection of defensive options, with, armors and spells, and healing spells, miracles, whatever. Sadly, poise and heavy armor in Dark Souls 3 are also pretty underwhelming. But moving on to Shadows Die Twice, Wolf. one of the more interesting characters here, as his game is the most removed from the others. Oh, there are certainly elements of the Souls games here, but Wolf is a character, not one we created. It's less RPG, more action. Still, he has a large number of feats and some good tools at his disposal all the same. On that note, I did also make a video about Wolf versus William from Neo, if you want to check that out. Wolf is an interesting case. Whilst you could compare the source of his strength to the many Souls characters who grow stronger due to turning souls into strength, or runes in some case, in so much that they need maidens and Wolf needs Kuro, whatever. In this situation, Wolf's immortality stems from Kuro, but he doesn't actually level up in the same sense that he takes souls from his enemies and imbues them into his own self. In fact, the main way Wolf develops is through studying various martial arts, getting new tools, and so on. Even if you kidnapped Kuro, it wouldn't stop him from providing that immortality to Wolf. And as Kuro is the divine heir, it wouldn't be easy to stop him from providing Wolf with that immortality, because how are you going to kill him? Exactly. Now, of course, people in Shadows Die Twice didn't really try and kill him, because, you know, they kind of wanted him on their side, I suppose, but even if the chosen undead kept bashing him on the head with a mace, who knows if that would really hinder Wolf in any way. And from a gameplay perspective, Wolf has the distinct advantage of being able to revive right on the spot. In terms of strength, though, I don't believe Wolf is that much stronger at the end of the game than he is at the start. He just has more tools, such as acquiring the Mortal Blade. Still, his feats are rather impressive. In terms of human enemies, he defeats Sword Saint Ashen and the Owl, who are probably the strongest of his opponents. Beyond that, he defeats, but doesn't kill, the Divine Dragon, slays the failed Shura Demon, and many other monsters. Despite his Mortal Blade, the foes coming up against Wolf are rather more grounded. Whilst he certainly fights the Divine Dragon, most of his opponents are far more ordinary. The bulk of them are made up with swordsmen and generals and the like. Finally, we have the Tarnished. Without Melina, they have no way to turn runes into strength. Whilst it's true you don't need her every time, that ability stems from her. She granted it to the Tarnished. Of course, the Tarnished enjoys the fact that they only need her to grant the ability to them. Because even if she is killed after that, the Tarnished won't lose the ability to convert those runes, meaning they are a tier above the others. In the context of this video, for example, the Chosen Undead, the Hunter, and all those lot, they would need to kill Melina before she gave that ability to the Tarnished, which is very unlikely because, for the context of this video, we are assuming all of these characters are at an endgame state. So, you know, Chosen Undead is max level, Tarnished is max level, everyone's max level, has every item at their disposal, basically. If you go level 1, well, as mentioned, I think the Hunter wins at level 1. The Hunter probably wins up to around level 50 from a gameplay perspective. After that, their strength kind of doesn't really increase as much, whereas, you know, a level 50 Elden Ring character versus a max level Elden Ring character, there is a huge difference. One can use everything, the other can use basically nothing. The Tarnished's immortality comes from the guidance of grace, the golden light seemingly granted to them by Queen Marika. One thing to note here is that such a form of immortality is rather like Wolf's, meaning the Mortal Blade could stand a good chance at severing it, or at least stand more of a chance than it would at severing, say, the Chosen Undead's immortality. That aside, the Tarnished, of course, has a huge number of weapons, spells, and items to work with. On top of having healing and FP restoration, they have the Sacred Flasks, and a few consumables that heal, although not quite as many as the others. And they probably have the flashiest magic, let's be real. On top of that, they have spirit summons and weapon arts to consider, which definitely changes up the battlefield quite a lot. But how about feats? Well, the Tarnished put down any number of dragons, including the mother of all dragons, Grail, to say nothing of any number of powerful humanoid opponents, including Starscourge Radahn, considered the strongest of the demigods once, along with Melania, Blade of Mikola, and the first Elden Lord, Godfrey. Beyond that, the Tarnished is able to slay a god in the form of Marika / Radagon / the Elden Beast. And unlike the gods of Bloodborne, who have subtle influences on the world, the Elden Beast and Marika seem to exhibit a greater form of more obvious martial strength. I mean, the Elden Beast straight up pulls out a sword and starts bonking you with it. Although, I would still argue that Gwyn is stronger than even the Elden Beast. He remains the only one we've been shown demonstrating his strength firsthand. And you might think, oh, it doesn't really matter, we saw Gwyn throwing a lightning bolt. I would argue that does matter quite a lot. Gwyn is the only one who was a wartime leader. Marika and the Elden Beast, from what I recall, it's never really stated that Marika and the Elden Beast fought on the front lines or anything. Radagon maybe more so. So you might have a good point if you were to bring up Radagon, but even so, I still think Gwyn is stronger in the sense that he would be a more powerful fighter, because he is a fighter. But if we're talking about the gameplay, the Tarnished has around 70 spells to go with dozens of armor sets and weapons, and there's so many spirit summons they can choose from, they would have one for like every situation, right? They could choose a ranged one, they could choose that Black Knife Assassin one, but there's so many. I mean, you ask me, I like Redmane Knight Ogre, he's the MVP. And then they have the Ashes of War or whatever. Whilst the Ashen one had weapon arts, Ashes of War are way better. Those in Elden Ring are just comically more powerful. Just look at things like a Moonveil and the Rivers of Blood back at launch. I mean, Flame of the Redmanes. And then we also have things like Bloodhound's Step and new mechanics in Elden Ring on top of that. So it's going to be a tough one, but the Tarnished has a lot of advantages. So let's look at it first up from a story or a lore side. Between the Tarnished, Ashen One and Wolf, who is the strongest? Well, I think it would be the Tarnished. For starters, whilst they do rely somewhat on Marika and Melina, for Melina you have to get her before she gives the ability to the Tarnished. And if we're going by end game logic, that's almost impossible to do because, you know, Tarnished is not that dumb, he's going to get Melina. As for Marika, to get Marika you have to go through the whole process of burning the Erdtree to get into the Erdtree, and even if you kill Marika at that point, would that remove the Guidance of Grace? Who knows? Even ignoring that, their feats are very impressive, because whilst, sure, I think Gwyn is stronger than Marika, in my opinion, the Chosen Undead only defeated a very weakened form of Gwyn, whereas the Tarnished, well, so far as we know, the Elden Beast wasn't weakened substantially. And there's another really big advantage the Tarnished has over Wolf: armor. Now you might say it's only a gameplay gimmick, but Wolf absolutely and realistically struggles with fighting an opponent in full plate armor. Remember that guy? I mean, I think we call him Roberto, even though Roberto is his son. I forget what his actual name is, but Roberto, you have to push him off a bridge. Whilst it doesn't mean Wolf can't beat an armoured opponent, you have to consider that he's fighting someone who isn't a pushover to begin with, and is most likely wearing a good full plate set of armour. So in a straight up fight, Wolf might just be bouncing off the Tarnished and the Ashen One and all the others if they're wearing plate, which, well, they would, apart from the Hunter. So I don't think Wolf would win. He also has very limited experience with magic. Of course, Wolf might well be able to use stealth to his advantage. Whether or not his Mortal Blade would work on the other characters is a point of contention. In my opinion, it would work on the Tarnished, because the Tarnished's immortality has a rather tangible source, the Guidance of Grace, whereas the Curse of the Undead is rather less substantial and thus, I believe, harder to sever. But really we have no way of knowing exactly how the Mortal Blade works, and if it would be able to permanently put down the Undead. So Wolf's a bit of an enigma here. He's a wild card. I do believe he could sever the Tarnished's immortality, but even if he did, he still has to contend with full plate, lots of magic, and, well, I mean, the Tarnished is also able to use katanas, so they can have a fantastic katana battle. Between the Ashen one and Tarnished, however, I think the Tarnished's feats are just somewhat higher than the Ashen ones. What about the Tarnished against the Chosen Undead, or Bearer of the Curse? Well, ignoring the fact that none of them really have a good way to permanently put down the other, same with the Ashen one, it's still a tough one. Ultimately, I think the Tarnished might actually come out on top, due to breadth of experience. If you think about everything the Chosen Undead and Bearer of the Curse fought against, is there anything there that the Tarnished kind of didn't fight against? Sure, he didn't fight the exact same enemies, but he fought things that are equivalent in some ways. Conversely, the Tarnished has experience fighting some things that the others don't. I mean, such as contending with a grappler. All three of them have plenty of experience dealing with humanoid enemies, though. So, as with the video I made in the past, I think it kind of comes down to willpower. Whilst the Tarnished may have the edge on foes defeated, I still believe the Chosen Undead and Bearer of the Curse win in willpower. My reasoning there being that they are, I feel, the less manipulated of the bunch. Several of the Tarnished's endings involve them being heavily manipulated, Shabriri and Rani in particular, whilst the other endings are closer to, Dark Souls, where yes, you are certainly nudged and manipulated in some sense. But the Tarnished, well, they never show that much will in any ending or any scene. They're quite passive. And now, of course, it's your character, it's a role-playing game, but even if you compare in just the cutscenes, think about Dark Souls 3, the Ashen one's always grabbing things. Now, they really need to stop grabbing things, because 9 out of 10 times something bad happens, but the Ashen one, if you think about all the cutscenes in the game, the Ashen one just kind of stands there staring at stuff like, what? But it's not a big deal. Naturally, it's a role-playing game, right? You make up your own mind there. I'm just saying how I interpret some matters, and I still think they do have a bit of a baked-in personality. Now, it's not a very strong or distinct one, but it's there. There's a little bit of character. There's also, remember the event where, what's his name, White Mask Vare, grabs you and puts that blood inside you, and your character's like, oh, and having conniptions. I mean, remember when Wolf got the mortal blade? He just collapsed and then stood up like, look, I'm fine. He didn't even grunt. Did he even make a sound when his arm got cut off? I'm gonna check that right now. Okay, yeah, I just went and checked because I couldn't remember, and yeah, when Wolf gets his arm cut off, all he goes is he lets out a little grunt and that's it. So, Wolf, he doesn't mess about. But hey, let's talk about gameplay. Last time I came to the conclusion that it was the Slayer of Demons who more or less came out on top, because of the sheer number of absurd things they can do. Still, one factor of that was the ability of the Slayer of Demons to break equipment with relative ease. It wasn't the main reason, but it played a part. But if you think about it, the Tarnished has no durability system, nor indeed does Wolf. Gameplay-wise, all of their equipment is unbreakable. You could touch that with the scraping spear all day and they would just be like, stop doing that. So I think it comes down to those three. The Ashen one, I think, is actually kinda easy to knock out here, as they're basically a Bloodborne hunter, minus the unique gimmicks Bloodborne has, but with more tools to work with. But ultimately, the number of tools doesn't really matter if you lose the R1 spam, which is what Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 are all about, and Bloodborne's R1 spam is better because of regain and other things. Better parries, for starters. So, here's the thing. Wolf enjoys a lot of advantages. His deflection system is very generous, and, I mean, for starters, that would absolutely destroy Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3 R1 spam when you're deflecting all of it. Especially if we are saying that Wolf gets his posture system so that after he deflects enough, he gets a free critical. But again, even if you get rid of that, he's still going to be able to deflect very well. And I don't realistically see how the other characters could get around that. Of course, that's in melee. To say nothing of Wolf's infinite stamina and ability to just sprint and jump away. Plus, he can swim, which I don't really see how that would be a huge advantage here, but he could always just go and sit in the water and they wouldn't be able to do much to him. Something like Tranquil Walk of Peace might help a little bit, but what can be done about the deflection? Ultra Greats, maybe? I'm Maybe, but Wolf is able to deflect some very big weapons, including some that are bigger than Ultra Greats. Which means your best bet would probably be ranged weapons and magic. I don't think he can really deflect magic and enough ranged weapons spam. Spam enough and you might be able to overwhelm Wolf. Which the Tarnished, well, Tarnished has some good projectile spam. They can swap between bow and magic easily and heave things left, right and centre. We also have some weapon arts that wouldn't be deflectable. I think without relying on those things though, Wolf is unbeatable in straight-up melee fight. Nor can you chase someone with infinite stamina and a grappling hook and a jump. Of course, I mean, the Tarnished could, because the Tarnished can also jump, and has a horse to catch up. The Tarnished is kind of edging out on top when it comes to gameplay, to be honest. I didn't even talk about the horse until now, but that surely plays a bit of a part, because, I mean, they can get on the horse and run away if they really want to, just to, you know, run over there, heal up. And if someone else is trying to run away, well, mount up and chase them down. Unless we're assuming this goes by PvP rules, and you can't use your horse in PvP. Technically, you can't use the spirit summons in PvP either, but it depends on what rules we're using, right? If it's PvE rules, and the Tarnished can use his horse and his summons, I don't really think anyone can get around that. The summons are a huge game changer, being able to summon these powerful allies. It also means that the Tarnished has some good counters to a lot of the Slayer of Demons' strongest techniques and spells. No durability for the Scraping Spear, as one example. Spells and talismans to make their elemental defense incredibly high, if not almost immune to that element, and some of the nastiest bleed weapons around. So, if we're talking gameplay, if we're including Torrent and the Spirit Bell, I don't think the Tarnished can be beaten. Even if we get rid of those two things, I still think the Tarnished is right at the top, along with Wolf, on account of being, well, they're the newest. You know, the newer games get more toys to play with, and in Wolf's case, a very different sort of game which affords him many advantages. In the same way that if we stuck, like, Devil May Cry 4 Dante in here, there would be no contest because he would basically be God compared to these people with all the nonsense he can do in that. From a gameplay perspective, not a story perspective. Overall, the Tarnished fares pretty well in both areas, I have to say. This isn't favoritism, by the way. This isn't just, you know, oh, Elden Ring's the newest and I like it the most or anything. It's not really my favorite of the games, but it's kind of undeniable that they enjoy a lot of advantages here. But what do you think? Of course, this video is just supposed to be a jumping off point for the discussion, the conversation. So let me know down in the comments. Obviously, we never know a clear winner, but it is fun to have a pointless discussion on power levels and theorize now and then, huh? So let me know. Did I overlook something, perhaps? Is there a certain spell that counters this or that? Maybe I forgot about that one spell that is in Dark Souls 2 that would get rid of the spirit summons. Or some talisman or build? We'll find out. Until next time, thank you so much for watching, and take care.